And now for something completely different.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi. Welcome to the future.
Remember, no guts, no galaxy.
Welcome to the No Guts, No Galaxy podcast number 169. We are your hosts, Darren and Phil, and today is Tuesday, December 13th, 2018.
Support for this podcast is brought to you by our patrons. We'd like to thank our latest patron, Wayne. Thank you so much for contributing. Would you like to support the podcast? Find out more at patreon.com/NoGutsNoGalaxy.
All right, in today's guests, we have Russ and Paul from PGI, and the topic today is faction play. But first, I think we're going to talk a little bit about MechCon 2018 and how that went, and kind of get you guys' perspective from that. How are you guys doing? Did either of you get the con crud, or did you both escape that torture that a lot of us got?
That
How are
you brought,
doing?
Darren?
Well, yeah, maybe I was
Yeah,
patient
let's be
zero.
clear. I'm pretty sure you brought that with you, so you can't
I was
blame,
patient
can't
zero.
blame us.
Yeah. Did you guys?
I'm
how are you guys
good.
doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm kind of just tired and kind of worn down from a long, stretch of busy hours. I think over the last number of months, ending the year, and kind of feeling burnt out right now. Looking for a big long Christmas break, but I've been healthy enough.
Absolutely, Paul.
I got a flu shot and I stayed a minimum of 15 feet away from you, so
I know,
I'm fine
I saw.
there.
Yeah, but some
yeah.
people got really close to you. I did notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Paul was too tired to get sick. I think that's, yeah.
Well, I got caught up on sleep, but at least I stopped thinking about the super pods every time I look at a light switch. So.
Yeah. Where are those, by the way? Are they in the office? What did you guys do with them?
A secret hangar somewhere.
Yeah, all four are lined up here in the QA area, so we can just walk over and play them anytime
Very
we
nice.
want.
That's very nice.
Very cool. So what is your guys' feelings on how MechCon 2018 went? It was all blur, even though it was 2 days, which was awesome. It still goes by in just a flash. How did you guys feel?
Yeah, 2 days was obviously really great because it was kind of weird when it was happening. It was like the second the first day was coming to a close, as kind of like tired as you were and stuff, I felt so like happy knowing that there was another one like
Yes.
I was kind of thinking, wow, like what if this was like it was just over, and it kind of made it sort of sound crazy almost that the previous 2 years were just the one day. It's like,
I know,
wow,
right?
I can't believe we go to all that work and all that effort, and then it's just like over. So in that moment, I just could not believe that we used to do all of that for, just like the one hard, like 11, 12-hour stretch or whatever.
Yeah, MechCon 1 and 2, we definitely just fired through that, worked our asses off to get it all done in one day. Totally preferred 2 days. What about you, Paul? I know the 2 nights leading up to MechCon, you were up all night working on the pods and didn't get any sleep. Did the 2 days make it a little bit better for you? Were you able to enjoy some of it?
The 2 days I think actually saved me because day one I was in a complete fog. That's also why I could only remember one item off of the list of community wanted for faction play update stuff.
Right.
Right. I just totally blanked on the rest of the list. But the second day was a lot more relaxed. Got a little bit of sleep the night before. And yeah, it was just super fun talking to people in a lot more casual
Yes.
pace, right? So
Yeah, it was cool. We had a lot of people there that were first timers. Of course, we always have the returning folks, but we had a lot of people there that were the first time. Some of it was because it was 2 days, and so it made more sense as far as them affording a trip. Some of them it was because they could bring their spouse and their children. Some of them it was just the first time invited. Like for example, Elias Tufexis, who by the way was blown away because he goes to a lot of game cons, obviously. He was blown away that there was such a large event for the BattleTech and MechWarrior community. He was, which I discovered, a longtime BattleTech and MechWarrior fan since like Mech 2 or something, the place where everybody came in. And so he was a true fan, and he just had no idea that there was an event like this, or that there could even be an event like this, that there were this many fans of the franchise. So it was cool to have so many new people there and kind of get their experience and then also, catch up with some people that have been to the past events and were able to talk about how essentially much better this was, both the venue and the 2 days and the family friendly. I thought it was just a great time this year for sure.
That's going to be our great legacy, I hope. Hopefully someone will pick up the torch when I kept thinking that during the show too. It's like, Piranha's done it really um, single-handedly the last 3 years in a row, and of course, like Hairbrain's there and Catalyst are there, and they're awesome, and we love having them there. But yeah, just as far as the planning and in particular the expense and everything's 100% on Piranha. So I'm hoping it's something that can sort of continue on. Even when Piranha, maybe things have changed for us or whatever. Like I don't know. I just reminiscing, but yeah,
No
it's
idea
awesome.
what
I'd
the
love
future
to see
brings.
it carry on, forever, really.
10 years down the road sort of thing. I mean, Darren,
Yeah.
you sort of say that already, which is, living in the now. We've never we literally have never had a convention for BattleTech, and
It's
so
something
here we are.
It's something I try and remind people, from the stage every year, is that this is an era, and we're not saying that it's stopping any particular year or anything like that, but obviously something like this is unlikely to go on forever. And so that's why I just feel like we need to appreciate it while we have it, and stop and smell the cockpits, so to speak, and enjoy the fact that there is, just like Elias said, there is an entire event devoted to this franchise that we all love, and I think that's super special. And it's something that we're all going to look back very fondly. Or hopefully you're not in the the crowd that you can't go, and you didn't you decided to skip it or whatever. Hopefully everybody gets a chance to come to one of the Mech Cons.
Well, we had when I was on my stage moment, which was like Saturday night. I'd gone up there and announced that, hey, we grew by 50% every year, and we're like 900 this year. As soon as I get off the stage, someone told me we actually were up to 960, and we had all of Sunday and stuff. So I don't have a newer figure, but it was dang close to 1,000. So
yeah,
we went from kind of the 200, kind of the Steam launch party, to 400 to 600 to 1,000. I think next year's, and I'm not announcing it yet, and hopefully we can announce it soon, but sometime in the first quarter we'll try to announce everything from tournament and everything, if that's things are looking like we can. We try not to we had a lot of postmortems to do, a lot of just figuring out if the world is gonna let us, and it's just never like an obvious simple thing for a small company like us, is all I mean, right? It's like it's a big undertaking, it's a big expense. So at any rate, maybe next year, I think the same spot would work well. I think we could probably grow. I don't know if we could do another 50% and stay in that space, but it could probably do 1,200 or more. So we'll play that by year, but it seems like a viable location for maybe another year.
The space itself was phenomenal. I loved the fact that we had so many different areas for people. Did you guys see, Russ and Paul, the pictures of all the kids playing? Like lined up at the computer banks, whether it was Solaris or BattleTech or anything. Did you see any of those pictures?
Pictures, but I was just kind of watching it in real time with my kids and other kids and stuff like that.
Some of my favorite pictures, and I'll show you one specifically a little bit after the podcast, but is Haven Kendrick lined up behind probably half a dozen kids, all sitting at computers learning how to play MechWarrior. It was beautiful, and it's just, again, opening it up to the family, I think helps us to bring all, every aspect of BattleTech and MechWarrior to another generation. I hear over and over again from parents who say that their kids love the giant robots, and and that's how a lot of us were introduced. Not me, I'm too old for it to be introduced to it from my dad, but a lot of people that we meet in the community were introduced to MechWarrior or BattleTech through their parents, and it's cool to see that happening again. Again, I just think it's an amazing experience. MechCon is a wonderful time to hang out with a lot of like-minded people that appreciate the same thing. Everybody coming together for something positive, and it was just an amazing event this year. I was bummed that I was sick, but absolutely 100% totally worth it.
Awesome. Well, I guess let's talk a bit about the championship, shall we?
Yes.
Boy, I'm just how to start this. I guess to start with, man, did I really enjoy them this year. And I admit, like, honestly, the last couple of years, one, because it was a one-day show and things were so frantic, I probably never really got to like chill and sort of focus on the tournament in the past, so that helped. But number two, I think, and this is maybe even bigger than the first one, is It just was so watchable this year. I
Yeah.
mean, man, was it watchable. Everyone I talked to, like everyone that was like hardly knows anything about MWO or really play it. Like let's say even the Catalyst guys who know a lot about BattleTech and stuff and everything don't really, maybe a lot of them don't really play a lot of like shooters in MWO, but everyone was sort of like able to really follow the matches. And I know for me, and I guess I'm assuming that a lot of it had to do with the stock mode and just the drawn out encounters. I mean, you'd see couple mechs like bump into each other and like all these exchanges and components popping, but mechs were living and they were like getting away, and then they'd live to have another exchange. And I just found the encounters and the battles and the match length and everything to be very, like, even more casual players could really discern what was going on. So I loved it. And I guess there was a bit of controversy when we announced stock mode, and I understand why. The comp players with their what they've been used to, but also the technology of the other things and the mech lab. But I had a few people that were comp players, or some people that were pretty outspoken when we first announced it, come to me and admit that they really liked it and kind of changed their mind on it. And I say all this not to say that like now this is what we're going to do. I mean, in fact, I'm really wide open. Like I'm open. I'm all ears for what we want to do next year. We can do something totally different. But anyhow, that's how I saw it. I don't know. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say, I think it was pretty fantastic. We've got two different things, right? We've got the participants and how they experience the going through the entire tournament, and then obviously the finals. And then we have the viewability. And I just want to sort of hit on that too. I mean, MetCon is just like that too, is you have the people that are there, and then you have the people that are watching from home, right? And the broadcast and stuff is for people watching. And one of the first things you'll notice when you watched was, because of the slow pace, the camera and engagements, you could watch and you could see literally how the matches were playing out. And because the matches were a little bit longer and because things were a little bit slower, it allowed, I guess, everyone to sort of be able to see movements and flanks and pushes by a light, or all that sort of play out. On the flip side, like you said, a little bit of controversy with the stock mode going out, but I did actually have comp players there, and when I asked, did you enjoy it? Some said yes, some said no, some said, hey, I remember Eon, one of the guys, said, I'm just glad there wasn't piranhas with machine guns, right? Arctic cheetahs with machine guns. So I think there's definitely some room for improvement. Like you said, Russ, possibly for next year if we end up doing that. But from a viewability standpoint, I really liked it, and it was really cool just being able to watch there at MetCon as well. The stage, how we had it presented as well, I think was just fantastic. Everyone had a seat if they wanted to sit right there in front of the stage as well.
Oh, that was so nice.
Yeah. So I think that's what's sort of tough, is riding that line of the enjoyment of people watching the matches and being able to follow along what's going on. Because, when the lights and everything are going 140, 150 kph, it is difficult sometimes to follow, right? And things happen really quick. But on the flip side, from a competitor standpoint, I think a lot of them said, hey, a little bit of customization might go a long way. Maybe not to the full extent that we had in the previous 2 years, but overall, I think it was fantastic representation of teams adapting to rules we gave them and coming out regardless of whatever those were. So just adapt and overcome. So I think it was fantastic.
Yeah. Those are two of the things that I'd like to kind of touch on. This is that one is that stock mode basically eliminated the min-maxing found in Mech Lab and on the skill tree. And it really brought home the fact that you are watching the top players who are capable of adapting to any kind of scenario based on their situational awareness, the capabilities of their mech, right? The fact that they're locked into that kind of build right from the get-go, right? Is like, I look at these top three teams as like the ultimate, players of MechWarrior Online in terms of their ability to adapt to any given situation, and they're just going to be a nightmare to face on the battlefield, no matter what level of customization is there, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of the feedback, I even got feedback from the comp teams as well, right? And agreeing with Phil here is that it was the concept is there, but let's look at a few little tweaks, right? Like you don't have to go full customization, but let's look at including a little bit more technology.
Yeah, I think it was the limiting them somewhat. There's a positive aspect to that, and I think we all hit on the same thing, which is there's some middle ground here, because absolutely the viewability matters. And the audio video team, they said this year they could understand what was happening, and whereas last time it was just a blur. And I remember them last year during the show saying, "What's happening right now? Who's winning?" And so I think you're obviously we're trying to find the best viewability for the people who are spectating and watching it, and then also the most enjoyability for the teams that are competing. And I think we hit on something this year, whether we hit on the perfect thing or it needs to be adjusted. Obviously, we're going to get people's feedback. Bandits are already out there doing that.
That's happening already. Just to let people know, for those that don't know out there, Bandit, Chris has talked to him as well, and we're going to continue on with those discussions behind the scenes, getting that feedback.
But I think definitely there's some kind of fine line there, where you're going to have some limitations, but you're also going to have maybe a little bit more customization. Who knows? We're not calling it right now. Obviously, this isn't a meeting right here to discuss how or if it's going to happen. But I definitely think there was some positive feedback there to be absorbed, and then work on the rest.
Just want to quickly pop out is that normally instead of me throwing somebody on the bus, I'm going to give somebody kudos, and that's based on the watchability of the games. Matt Newman hit it out of the park with his overlays and graphics, and making sure that people understood what was going on.
Yeah.
So you had the kill death counters, you had the win losses, you had the brackets being updated, right? That was all on point this year. So
definitely an improvement.
Yeah, like Mike and those guys came in early and worked with Matt pretty heavy that last day too, which really helped a lot.
Yeah, big thanks to Ben and Mike, because they did come in a day early, and they sat in the office, and they worked as hard as anyone to assist Matt in making it a better presentation, which I totally think it was a huge improvement over 2017 in a lot of ways. So I think we're obviously, like we just said, and Russ, unless you want to reiterate or take it further, discussions will be happening regarding next year and what's happening or what's not happening, and that'll be brought to the public as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's good enough. I'm just saying, I think the most important part, though, just keep in mind, is that I think the viewability for people watching, people at MechCon and people on Twitch, and like that's the most important thing, right? Like I love the fact, like I definitely want the competitors to have fun and want to compete and everything, but like I think if we can all just keep in mind that the most important thing is to kind of spread the sport and spread the love, and the enjoyment of the viewers should probably be key, right? And so that's just where I come from, and more than anything, just to summarize it, we just wanted to do something different. That's what drove our decision. It's not like we came up with any big reasons like, oh wow, it's got to be this for this reason, that reason. It's just like, you know what? Let's not have the third year in a row of the exact same stuff. Let's try something different. And I think under that notion alone, then it was a success. And so it'd be cool if next year we could do something different. That's it, something a little different.
Yeah, sounds good.
Before we move into the next issue, I just wanted to see, did you guys get a chance to look at that picture I linked you? And that's the one I was referring to anyway. Haven Kendrick, bunch of kids.
Yeah,
just love it.
That's awesome. It's like all kids. So there's a whole new generation of mech warriors on the way up.
I love it. That was.
Have you seen the GIF of Haven dancing?
Yes. I had no idea he was such a good dancer. All right, so let's move into still with what happened at MechCon 2018, but let's address a little bit about MechWarrior Online. Obviously, there was a lot to talk about as far as MechWarrior 5, a lot to show off, the super pods. Paul, why don't you get into what you announced at the only thing you were able to remember on Saturday, what you announced at MechCon in regards to MWO and faction play, and we can move into this discussion.
Loyalists are worth it. I'm done.
There you go.
No, after the MechCon announcement, like there was a, shall we say, outcry of lack of information. So what I did is I went and reposted what was talked about prior to MechCon, and kind of gave them almost like a priority rating in terms of color coordinating certain items. Some of the things are like I noted here was need serious reconsideration, right? As if it's worth it or if people actually want it, right? It's still up for discussion. Nothing's completely pulled off the table, but we'll have to talk about this kind of stuff. Again, there's been a fairly positive feedback rate on the new forum thread. I encourage everybody to get in there. The reason why I'm doing this on the forums is that I want to make it as transparent as possible. There's been talk of people wanting to set up Discords or TeamSpeaks for talking about this kind of stuff. That's not inclusive, right? It's not covering everybody, and it doesn't allow somebody to come in and voice their opinion or their thoughts while the discussion is happening, right? So that's the importance of the forums. And again, I encourage everybody to get in there and take a look at what's going on.
And the post you're referring to is Faction Play Update post MechCon 2018, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, we'll link it in the show notes so everybody has a chance to check it out.
And I should just check to make sure that it's pinned. If not, I'll get it pinned.
It is.
Yeah,
okay,
it is.
Perfect. So I gave color coordination, like yellow items on the list, right, is a primary feature. That means it's probably going to take longer to develop, but at the same time, is like it's almost like that's a core item that has to be done for this update to be successful, right? So people can look at those things and just understand it's like, yes, those are on the board, but they're going to take a while to develop, right? I marked stuff in orange text to be under immediate investigation. That's stuff that would be fairly low-hanging fruit, or just stuff that's like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. We can get this stuff in.
Things like, for example, objective play reward increase, adjust launch countdown, call to arms, timer change, etc.
When it comes to rewards for call to arms participation, and actually just that one for now, it's something that we have to look into because we want to make sure that this is automatable, right? And I want to make sure that I'm not overstretching by just saying, yeah, it's going to go in there, you're done, right? It still requires a little bit of investigation with the engineers, but it's a pretty low-hanging fruit, so we'll try to get that in as soon as possible. One thing that is in orange, and it's been something that's been requested numerous times in previous conversations, was that more than 4 drop decks. That is being prioritized because it's fairly low-hanging fruit, and it's going to be dropping in a patch very, very soon. It might be January. If it doesn't make January, then it'll definitely be February.
Okay.
Right, so when stuff like that gets completed, right, I'll be marking it off, and then who else? Like other stuff might turn orange or turn green or what have you, right?
It's a work in progress.
Exactly.
Can I ask, Paul, this list of stuff that we have here, you mentioned there'd been dialogue with the community already. Is that where this list is from?
Yes, there's 2 threads that were started. One was started by Just Call Me Ash.
Yep.
Right. He kind of did a preemptive strike on me because I was planning on doing this big faction play request for information and dialogue, and he started one before that. So I stepped in there and we started having a conversation in there. Then it went to a more official one where I updated like the latest talks and latest developments, right? And that's where this list was generated from, right? And now that this list is populated, there's still people adding some great ideas, right? And some of the stuff is low-hanging fruit, and I'm going to try to get that prioritized. But at the same time, it's like, let's just make sure we're hitting a lot of these things on the list right now and addressing any concerns or thoughts that are coming in with the continuing discussion.
Yeah, and I suggest highly, if you have any investment or care about faction play, to come and get involved in this thread. It is 12 pages long currently. There's a lot of discussion going on, but everything does get read, even if not everything is responded to. So it's totally worth it. If if it's something you care about, then take part in it, participate.
So yeah, and it's like officially we talked about an April patch, and I guess that's kind of for a bulk of it, but we can just kind of think of it almost like it's what we're working now. So focus in MWO, and some things are going to come in sooner than that, but a lot of it's going to kind of wait for like the April timeframe. And No, I guess one thing I wanted to say was coming into MechCon, we knew, a month out from MechCon that the biggest thing we were going to hear about was that, the MWO updates were weak. And it's like watching a train wreck come, and it's like we knew that was going to be the case, but it's like there's really nothing it was very little we could do about it with the way the show was coming down, all the obviously with the Mech 5 demo and the super pods and everything, and the fact that things that we were working on for Mech Online were things that we had like we just went over, and they're things that are in process, but they're not very sexy. They don't lend themselves to a fancy trailer or something like that. So we kind of knew that was going to happen. Tried to address it as best we could in the stage moment, but it just wasn't enough. And so here we are. We're talking about it, but it's like there's definitely NWO. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, I continue to be very surprised at and I take a lot of I guess satisfaction in seeing just how much people love MWO. Like sometimes I get reminded of that because I am extremely busy with making MechWarrior 5, and we could turn and talk about that for a minute, but MechWarrior Online's been great. It's been out for 7 years, but like there's a lot riding on MechWarrior 5. I mean, MechWarrior 5 in some ways I could almost say is it'll be if it's not a good game, it's very likely it could be the last MechWarrior game ever made, right? I mean, if you take a look at the fact that it took Piranha getting the license and making MechWarrior Online to create the first kind of online multiplayer MechWarrior game ever, but also just to get that door open again, and then now here we are making MechWarrior 5, but man, if it's bad, if it bombs, it's like I don't know if there'll ever be another MechWarrior game again. So there's a lot riding on it, and so I'm definitely really focused on that. And sometimes I'm really focused on it, and I still have people like Paul and others that are totally dedicated to MechWarrior Online. I spend a lot of time on it still, but sometimes I get reminded at places like at MechCon where I'm talking to comp people, or even last night I jumped onto Phil's stream, I jumped onto Lord Majestic stream, and great stream, by the way. First time I've been on there. That was really fun.
Yeah.
And people love MechWarrior Online, and sometimes I'm kind of blown away and say, wow, they're probably excited for MechWarrior 5, all these guys, but they're still really passionate about MechWarrior Online, and that's really cool to see after all these years. So we're definitely still committed to doing updates for it. We still care a lot about it. Still very important to us. Faction play. There's an update coming there, and but then we have some stuff to talk about with maps too. But just want to make sure we're done with this subject.
Sure, I do want to. This is something I felt very strongly too. Like I don't know where the line is drawn between a small studio and a medium studio, but obviously
65 is small these days. But
okay, right.
Small.
So I mean, typically any big game you hear the studios having 200-300 people more. So PGI being a small studio, obviously you've taken on a lot. You've had, like you said, a 7-year-old multiplayer free-to-play game out there for a long time. We've come full circle with the 2009 MechWarrior 5 trailer that you guys, originally that's what you wanted to do. Now come full circle, you're doing it. MechCon every year is a huge task and a lot of work, adding the mech pods to it this year. I feel like my life revolves around MechCon because as soon as it's over, we're thinking about the next one. And it's, I think for a small studio, that's a ton. And sometimes people maybe don't think objectively or take in the big picture. You're self-publishing MechWarrior 5. There's a lot to consider. And I think the outcry about MechWarrior Online, number one, it's understandable, but number two, I think the most important thing to understand when people are getting upset about what they consider not enough content for MechWarrior Online is exactly what you just said. It's because they love the game. They're not complaining about it because they don't care about the game. They're not indifferent. They love this game, and they've loved it for, some of them too, all the way up to 7 years, that we're playing in beta and so forth. So I think that's, like, when I see people angry that there wasn't more content or more promises or trailers or whatever for MechWarrior Online, I understand. They're not saying that because they hate the game. They're saying that because they love the game. And it has been something that a lot of us have been, it's a part of our lives, and it has been for many years. And so I took that to heart, that there's a lot of people out there that still love it. And I also know that there's more coming, and as things can be announced, they will be announced. So all in all, to me, it was a positive thing because I just know how much passion and love for the games are in this community.
Yeah, it's like at MechCon, and like I'm having my stage moment, and like some of the things that are supposed to go up in the screens are like taking an extra few seconds to get up there. I'm getting a little frustrated with it, and it didn't go super smooth, and but then as I was telling someone the next day, I was like, I want everything to go perfectly, but it's like you got a 65-person studio that's running MechWarrior Online, developing MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, and planning and putting together and funding the entire MechCon show. Like, there are limits. And,
oh, yeah.
And like you bump up, we press as hard as we can, but we just bump up against those limits. And I think that's just, there's only so much you can do. And so I just say, like, I'm Matt and all those guys that put together an AV company, like, a lot of the times, like 80% of the show, you could say that's comparable to like whomever, EA's show or whoever, like some big dog putting on a show. So sometimes when it doesn't quite live up to that kind of production quality or whatever, it's like, well, there's just some limits. We're pushing up against those limits as best we can, and proud of the team for everything they're doing. And then the last angle of this, of course, is it's also not possible without the fan support. Like MechWarrior Online isn't around for 7 years without people still loving it and supporting
Absolutely.
us and supporting MechWarrior 5. And obviously we're still counting on that. We're still counting on people's interest and support for MechWarrior Online, but also for MechWarrior 5. And hopefully this has got to be it's got to be a success, like I said, in every way, sales, ratings, everything. And it's on us, and if we make a good game, then people will be there for us.
Yeah, even the continued support or development of MechWarrior Online obviously ties into Mech 5 and how that is received. So I think it's super important just to take everything in mind, like you just said. But you're right. It's easy to get caught up in the critical aspect of the community, and nothing wrong with being critical. It's necessary and it's essential for a game to develop and get better. But obviously, hearing positive feedback, and boy, MechCon is a place to hear positive feedback. It definitely helps and reminds us how passionate and dedicated this community is.
Yeah, and I mean, after MechCon streaming, obviously discussion has come up on forums, on Reddit, and so forth. And I'm a player myself, right? And so it's one of those things where having a foot on the inside, but also being a player, I understand. I mean, I even talked to you, Russ, and when we were out MechCon about it. And a part of me as a player is like, well, what about for the next 9 months, right? Because again, I'm right out there with everyone. And then on the other side is knowing what I do, and obviously more coming out on Mech 5 as far as information in the next months leading up to. I'm super stoked, and I'm like, well, it's one of those like balances. So as a player, yeah, I can definitely understand why someone would be disappointed, and that's why I feel like it's so important to like have these podcasts as well, is explaining that you guys still are dedicated towards it and you're still working towards it, but also for everyone out there understanding how important. Because let's just take a moment, Darren. You just said something. Remember that time between Mech 4 and then MWO? We all do. It was like
it was an eternity, man.
And like with Mech 5 coming out, and I've said this, and I can't go into too much detail, but I expect people to be playing this game for, I said it yesterday during my stream, 10 years. I fully believe it's going to be like a Oblivion, Skyrim, anything, but yeah, so
I think it's a no-brainer. People are still playing Mech 4 after 17, 18 years. So I think no-brainer.
So it's one of those where as a player, I understand. As a player, of course you want what about now until then, right? And not everybody wants PvE. That may come as a shock to some. Some people just like PvP. So from like a competitive standpoint, and a being able to shoot other players, you've got a lot of people, that want to hear from you guys about that. So thank you guys for answering those questions as well.
You remember
So,
the like I said, I've said this before, but I'll repeat it again. Like MechWarrior Online was to fulfill a dream. It was about all of us who played MechWarrior 1, 2, 3, and 4, and in the latter games, 3, 4 in particular, they had very basic multiplayer features. And multiplayer stuff was so basic back then. 3 was like on like the Zone, Microsoft Zone, or whatever that's called. Mech 4, a little bit better as it went along in the mods and stuff, but very basic. And so it was like all those dreams we always had, where you'd like, we're sitting there playing some of those old school MMOs way back then, and thinking like, what would it be like to have like a persistent like online, community MechWarrior BattleTech. And so that's what MechWarrior Online was about, to fulfill that. And it did in a lot of ways. Probably didn't go as far as some would like in other ways, like kind of going back to faction play conversations, and you could basically make an entire game just around faction play. But
Sure.
then there's MechWarrior 5, which is the dream there is more straightforward, of like, when you played MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries or MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, or one of these games probably came pretty close to, like, at the time being your perfect game, except for the fact that it was too linear and too short. And so MechWarrior 5 Mercs is about, okay, let's create a much more free, much more open, much longer experience with a ton more replayability. And so that's where that comes from. So I guess I can die happy if I can just get this thing shipped. So anyhow, we're here to talk about MechWarrior Online, and we have a little more to talk about.
You hinted at something that I'm very excited to hear about.
So can I interject before we get there? So if someone's coming to the faction play discussion and they're reading that forum post, Paul, and they've got ideas, would it be fair to say that what you guys are doing is working within what faction play currently is? Like, you're not looking for like, scrap it and here's a brand new version of faction play, what I feel it should be. You guys are looking for more of maybe consolidation in areas, things to ease of use for players, and ideas that fit within the framework. Is that correct saying?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. Like, yeah, if we want to, like, the pie in the sky, like faction play stuff that maybe some people dreamed about when they first heard the words faction play or community warfare first uttered, that's a lot of that stuff would literally be like 2 full years development time, like a completely different game with a whole new budget and everything else. So yeah, it's very much like, here's what we have. We've gone through like 3 or 4 phases or whatever the heck we've called them over the years. There's a lot there, and for a lot of people, some of their best memories of all time in MechWarrior Online are around a certain era, say, of faction play. And so this is more about like, okay, we've captured magic at times in various stages of faction play at various moments. Let's do our very best with the community to kind of concentrate the best of what faction play has been and could be based on the current, tool set, with adding and trying to find maybe the right combo of kind of put it in the best spot we possibly can. And I feel like that's the effort we went under, and I don't know, Paul, do you think that's accurate of like the effort that we're undergoing?
No, we're rewriting the whole thing now. Actually, to touch on that is that in the first discussion threads between Just Call Me Ash and my follow-up threads, is that it was an understanding is like, we can't rewrite every single system. We can't just, we're going to create a whole new faction play. That's just not going to happen. And I'm being very, very, very honest with people and very transparent with people in those conversations. For example, AI was brought up, and I just said, look, it's a wonderful idea, right? It'd be really cool to have, but I can tell you this, it is just not going to happen, right? Because of the amount of system rewriting, the amount of networking that we'd have to do is just monumental. It's like Russ is saying, it's a whole different game with a whole different budget involved with something like that. But that being said, it's like, let's take a look at what you have to suggest. And I even posted the table of contents from the design document that I gave to the engineers to do a quick technical review on. And I explained to the communities, like, this is what we want to do. Is there anything else you guys want to add? And that's what this faction play update thread and discussion is all about. And the key point there is that it's a discussion. It's like, I will follow up with you and I'll explain to you why we can't do certain things. And if there are things we can do, I have to have the understanding of the community is like, there are limitations about how far we can take something. And if you understand and work with me on those limitations, then we can start getting more and more stuff in there without having to like divert the entire MechWarrior 5 team onto MechWarrior Online just to get it working, right?
Yeah.
And just a quick touch up as well is that this current list that you see online is a living document. I will be updating that as things go through. Now, I touched on the whole thing about 4 drop decks increasing to, we don't know a number yet, or if it's just going to make it unlimited, but it'd probably be a limited number, but pretty high. Yes, it's still orange, and it hasn't switched to green, which is complete in a future patch, because I don't have that in a build. I will do that when it's in a build, right? I don't want to sit there and just preemptively say, oh, this is coming, then have something go wrong. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can't really do that, right? Because that's just going to make a lot of people angry. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a living document, up to date. And maybe when it comes to the big yellow feature set, I'll have maybe somebody like Ricky, our QA lead, come in and discuss like what the plan is for testing it, how it's going along, if it's failing testing, right? Just to let people know, like, who knows? Something really drastic happens, right? And we might have to push a date.
Yep.
At least you'll be up to date why it's happening.
And to touch on what you said, Russ, as far as sometimes faction play really strikes a chord, and some of people have had their best memories from that. I can personally attest that when I was running faction play regularly with aces, and that was a couple years ago, I did have some of my best times ever. We know that there's something there. We know that there's something good there that can be refined and made better. So, again, it's dealing with the realities in life, dealing with the realities in business. And I think we just all, again, have to take a deep breath and keep those things in mind and remember that we have these now, which is 100 times better than not having them. So if you enjoy the games, enjoy them, but also participate. If faction play is something you care about, then get on over there to that thread, check it out, make some comments, come back again in a month or whatever, see where things have progressed, and keep up with it. You guys can make a huge change and affect the direction that faction play goes in to a limited extent, obviously. But I do think there's something there. There's something that obviously people really have had a great time and care about. So I'm looking forward to hearing where that goes. But I am even more anxious to hear, let's go back to where we were about to go forward and talk about maps. Russ, what do you have to tell us about maps in MWO?
Yes. Basically, everyone loves maps, right?
Yes.
I think I won't go on too long about this, but like, there's like a really a never-ending appetite for them, even though sometimes I think we don't get as much credit as we should for how many we do have, because I think a lot of online multiplayer games have far fewer maps than we have.
Every game I play, multiplayer online game that has, no matter if they have 20 maps or 60 maps, people always want more maps.
Yeah, it's true. I get it. And in some games, much bigger budget stuff might have even fewer than we have, and probably even fewer maybe of the ones that people like or playable ones. But it is what it is. People are just going to want more maps because you play them. It's so fun, so fresh. New experience. So, but they take exceptional amount of. It's one of those things that's grown so much with the game industry too. Like the amount of resources it takes to make a game now is so extreme, and even just to put out a map now, like even a map in MechWarrior Online can take many months of focused effort, and It just takes so much now. But I couldn't necessarily, jump all over, committing to some especially things like the latest. You look at the Solaris City one or the one previous to that, a popular map. And so, but one idea we had recently that I know people have been asking about for a long time, and I think the time is finally right to make it happen. And I think it's gonna be great because on the one hand, people have been asking about this for a long time, and they're gonna be very excited about it. And it also is something that we can do more quickly and more in the short term to get some more variety in people's hands without, saying, okay, 6 months from now we'll have a new map for you or like something like that. So we finally kind of dusted off the idea the other day in our production meeting and decided to go ahead with it, which is we're going to bring back a handful of the classic maps. So in particular, Forest Colony Snow, or whatever that's called, the icy one, and the original Frozen City.
Nice.
So we're going to dust those off.
Yes, I agree with the applause there.
Sorry.
I
couldn't contain myself.
And I know naturally people might say like, well, will those maps play like 8v8 or something like that? I don't think so. We're not committing to any 8v8 changes. I had some thoughts about that, but the matchmaker implications and buckets and all that stuff. And no, it'll be 12v12, but I think it'll be pretty cool. I still think, and I'm trying to remember if any of those maps had brief moments in time of 12v12. I think they must have.
Yeah, Frozen
right?
did. Yeah, Frozen did.
Yeah, Frozen did for sure. What about even the original Forest Colony?
Yeah, Forest did as well. Yeah, we had.
Yeah,
them,
it's been so long now; it's hard to remember. But
oh yeah, we did.
At any rate, I think it'll be pretty rad. And and then just to kind of so those three in particular, I'm getting told that we're actually gonna patch those three into the game in the March patch. So that's pretty quick. You just have the January and February patches, right? And then boom, March patch. You have 3 classic maps returning. So they're not going to support certain game modes. They're not going to obviously Escort's gone for the time being. It wouldn't support that if it was back in, and it won't support Incursion. But I believe it'll support the remaining ones. I didn't think of Domination, Paul, but I think it will, right? Not positive about that, but I can say for sure is Skirmish, Assault, and Conquest, like in the old days, for sure. At least those game modes will be supported on those 3 maps. So that's March, which I think is pretty great. And next step beyond that, another thing we're thinking of doing that's kind of like mid-level effort is, and I don't have a committed date for this, or we haven't exactly like pushed the green light button on it yet, but another idea is to take a really good map like Canyon Network and say, give it the full swamp level asset treatment. So like totally swampify it. So it's the exact same terrain though. So that the thing there is we can, if it's using the exact same terrain and spawn points, that removes like a huge amount of the time effort to create a new map because you have to play test it and everything and all that. So we could take something like Canyon Network and just give it the entire like Viridian Bog / the Solaris Swamp one treatment across the board, like ground textures, logs and trees. And so it would be the same terrain, but obviously sight lines and visibility and everything would be totally different. Yet we know that the map shape and size and everything is play tested and works. And so that's something we could do with fairly, compared to a new map, fairly low effort, like in the 6 to 8 week range. So we haven't, first things first, I think we're going to get those classic maps in, but what we might do after that Canyon Network idea is something we might do kind of right after that, which means that also in 2019, besides the classic maps, there's a chance of maybe seeing even a couple more, like I just mentioned, sort of
makeovers.
Canyon Network idea. Yeah. So we get a bunch more variety and get some more stuff that without taking, large amounts of time to get new stuff in.
Without destroying Mech Warrior 5. Remember, we got to keep that thing up there and make it as great as possible. I think that's awesome. I already know, because I've been here. I mean, Phil will totally say the same thing, I'm sure. We've been hearing for years since those original maps have been taken out. Bring them back. People love them. Whatever the reason, whether it was because they like the smaller maps or nostalgia or whatever, they want those maps back. I've been hearing it nonstop since they were removed. So I think that's huge.
I mean, of course, it's one of those things where more maps, the better, sure. But we have a lot of maps that, sometimes don't get voted for again, because if you have a choice and someone can choose Canyon or whatever over Polar or something like that. So one, Frozen City, the original, Forest Colony, the original, I think that's fantastic. It's going to be a completely different experience as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we used to have 12v12. We did. And we went from 8v8 to 12v12. And I remember people saying, you know, like, oh, these maps need to be bigger now that we got more players. And it's funny is a lot of people came full circle.
Yep.
Once
These
we
maps
had
need
more,
to be smaller.
right? But also, too, is where the fights happen. I mean, when Frozen City got blown up, the fights transition from dropship, right? And we had the cave that, you know, in there. And I remember we used to have...
by the way, Paul was like, oh, the only problem with that old Forest Colony map is the cave. And I was like, you kidding me? That's awesome. Like,
Yes.
it definitely had its issues, and it was kind of like some graphical bugs. I said, screw it. We're not fixing any of it. We're bringing it back the way it was, classic, with, you know, like render bug and all, like when you come out of the cave and stuff. And it was awesome. That's like the dust tunnel, right? With the death swarms that would be going in and out of that tunnel and stuff. That was cool.
And I think that's, if anything, people have been asking for it too. It'll mix things up. People are going to vote for them, including myself. And as far as the taking current maps that work and putting a new skin on them, and I'm assuming that means you can still put new stuff on them. It's just if they use the base terrain, and you guys could put trees and rocks and stuff, and you can mix up a map. I mean, you mentioned Canyon being Viridian Bog, and you know, that sort of bog biome. Really, that's what you're talking about, a biome. Yes, all the yes and more yes, and I think a lot of people would enjoy that. So,
Canyon Network makeover. I like it. Yeah, I mean, all this is great, and what I appreciate about it, because I understand the pipeline and how long it takes to make new maps. I'd way rather. Well, first of all, I think the classic maps returning is just a no-brainer. Not everybody. Tons of people have wanted that for a long time, so that totally works. Low-hanging fruit. But I would way rather have makeovers of good maps that are out there than nothing. You know, absolutely. So I think those are both very positive, and this is the first time Phil and I have heard about both of these very realistic reactions here. I'm excited. I'm super excited. I'm happy I can't wait for the community to hear about it, and I can't wait for them to be implemented. March is just right around the corner.
Sweet. Yeah, that's all we have tonight. So I just appreciate everyone listening in, and, you know, spread the word out there. We still love Mech Online. We love that you love it. And, you know, we're going to get some good stuff here and then March obviously is going to have the new Corsair mag. So that's another thing in March. Remember, everybody, the super duper Christmas giveaway.
December 27th.
Yeah. It's like, it kind of goes from like there's like a 36-hour stretch from like, I don't know, like starts even on the 26th through the 28th. It kind of goes across 36 hours. So find out when it works within we did that so that it should work for everybody at any time zone, no matter where you live in the world. There should be a moment when you can log in, play that match, and just get all that free content. Dust off everything, call your buddies, anyone who hasn't played for a while, make sure they at least log in long enough to get all their free stuff. Want everyone to log in and get that.
That's literally 2 weeks from today. So that's the 27th, whether, you know, time zone, it's 26th, 28th, whatever. Look it up, mwomercs.com. Get a bunch of free stuff, 2 unique hero mechs, bunch of MCC bills, premium time. mwomercs.com. Check it out. Make sure you log in. All you have to do is drop one match and you get all that stuff for free. Totally worth it. And a big Merry Christmas from PGI. Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that we did this podcast. I like that we're able to talk about faction play and some things that are coming up in MWO. Hopefully we can do more. I know that Phil and I want to have Ash and Dane, 2 community members on that have a passion for faction play, and talk to them and get their perspectives as well. We're going to try and have some more podcasts with PGI, whether that's in regards to MWO or Mech Warrior 5, and we'll get those out as soon as possible as well. We're back into it, even though it's holidays. We're going to be busy through the holidays, and we're going to just go running straight into 2019 and everything that's coming next year. So Russ, Paul, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for playing. Thanks for everything. We got all sorts of awesome announcements coming, and 2019 is going to be rad. So hopefully we can get you all the announcements on MechCon and World Championships and all that stuff. And we just hope we get the great pleasure of continuing to work with this brand and making these products for you guys.
Awesome. Paul?
Just a reminder, get in on the forum talks if you want to have a voice. Everybody's voice matters. And yeah, just keep it a casual discussion. Then a lot more gets done and a lot quicker, and a lot more people have buy-in or alternative ideas to what you might come up with if you just maintain it as a conversation. There's been some questions about how the balance discussions will be handled, and they should be handled in the same way. Again, with the transparency, with the limitations, just letting everybody be part of it. And yeah, get on the forums, let us know what you're thinking, and we'll work forward on a day-to-day basis, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Paul.
Again, thank you, Russ and Paul, for taking the time. And I just want to say thank you for shedding some light on the maps and, of course, faction play. And we will be reaching out again to Paul very soon. And it'll probably be Paul and Chris to talk about balance within the 2019 beginning of that year as well. And hopefully Russ and maybe some Alex Garden talk about Mech 5. I'm crossing my fingers, guys. I'm going to get them. I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but I'm going to get them. But thank you guys for coming out here and talking about that. This podcast is supported by you, the viewer. Please consider supporting us by a variety of ways. Subscribe to our Twitch channel, become a patron. We got a merch store as well. And of course, if you're doing any shopping on Amazon, especially for the holidays or vice versa, we've got an affiliate link. When you guys use it, we get some kickback. So check that out. Anything would be appreciated. Thank you guys so much for the support.
Be sure to check out our website at NoGutsNoGalaxy.net, on Twitch at NGNGTV, YouTube at NoGutsNoGalaxy TV, Twitter at NoGutsNoGalaxy, Facebook at NoGutsNoGalaxy Podcasts, SoundCloud at NoGutsNoGalaxy, and for all the latest and greatest in mech porn t-shirts and mugs, be sure to check out NoGutsNoGalaxyStore.com.
This was your local No Guts, No Galaxy MechWarrior podcast. Signing off for tonight, this is Phil.
And this is Darren.
Until next time, Mech Warriors.
It'd be best if you avoid me, but I know you probably can't. You sense something is wrong with me. You can feel it on my skin, but there is more within. Maybe I can be closer now, but I don't know how. Please help me remove my metal skin. My metal skin. My metal skin and the wires within. You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is, at one time I was, but now I'm a robot. Forever